Gentlemen and gentle ladies on what they have to say.
Great, thank you so much. Ms. Calico?
Yes.
Would you like to go first, since you've probably been, not the oldest, but you've been here for more experience?
That was an awfully nice Thank you for that. You know,
Can you come forward so that they can hear you, please?
Are you saying you're responsible?
I looked through this just a little bit, trying to decide what I thought. And there's two things that I think are really, really important. I guess really three. And I've looked at my election laws here going over them. The first thing is at-large voting. We need to make rules, procedures, and then stay with them. The at-large voting was not addressed in these election laws. And I guess by the time all of us realized it, we were so far along in the process that was really difficult for us to figure out, or for the commission to figure out, and the staff, what to do. So at-large voting. The other thing is we're talking about redistricting, and there was a number of maps and different things in the redistricting. If you're going to redistrict, it needs to be done now. And then the third thing I'll tell you is we have changed these laws. I've served on 4 election commissions, and then I worked for this last election commission. And it's unbelievable how these laws change every time. A lot, not just some, a very, very big amount of changes in it. We need to make a set of election laws and leave them. Set the process, set what election day is going to be, set what runoff is going to be, and leave them. The Carter administration, I look back at that to see what it said, and it said that it was too confusing, it was too cumbersome, and that our people did not know the rules. And as soon as we'd make them with one election, we would change them with the next one. I would suggest that whatever we do on these new laws, let's set them and let's keep them and not change them. And those would be my recommendations. I might talk about specifics if anybody has a question.
Yes, Ms. Coates?
Would you address some of the specifics about the at-large voting? What sorts of rules and procedures would you see as being
Well, I think the at-large cannot be changed now because it's in the Constitution that this is the way we're going to do it. But my point is, when they started talking to us about how we do this and what the person does, the word at large is not in here. So the commission scurried around with the help of the attorney and the staff and thought, oh, how do we do this? You know, so we did the best we could, and we know there was a lot of problems. Someone that lives Kansas right over the line, they wanted to vote at South Coffeyville. They wanted to vote in that district. They didn't send their form back. They didn't realize they had to vote for the at-large people. And now they are at large. They remain that way now.
Okay, so it's those. So it was the initial registration of people into that district rather than the actual process of absentee voting.
And you know, I don't think we quite understood it when we started in, and we, I mean all of us, because I think had I been a council candidate, I would have tried to get all my people in my district. You know, and I don't think some of them understood that, or at least what I heard from some. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Henry?
Martha, one question that I know we're going to be dealing with, you know, is the whether we're going to have a notary on these ballots in the future. You've worked on several elections. Tell us, do you think notaries or a notarized ballot is more secure or not, or if it makes a difference, or as to the verification process of it?
My thought is they're much more secure and they're needed. That's my personal thought, Todd.
Okay.
Any other questions from Ms. Calico? Ms. Camwise?
How do you, I mean, for some, I think in California, it may cost like $20 or something for some folks. So how does it not constitute a poll tax? I've always struggled with that. I mean, because I would think if they're going to cheat, they're probably going to find that somebody to notarize it to cheat. Just
It would help them cheat? I don't know. I understand what you're saying. I think it's more secure if it is notarized.
Okay. Thank you.
Martha, don't run off. Mr. Garvin?
According to the Carter Commission report, they said it's definitely a poll tax that needs to be eliminated, and I feel that way too. We had lots of complaints. Because if they're going to cheat on that, they can cheat on notarizing too.
Yes, sir.
But Carter Commission says we definitely need to do away with that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Todd, did you have a response to
Well,
that?
one thing that, and I think it's something that the council is going to have to tackle is the balancing act. Obviously a notary makes a ballot more secure for verification process, but also do you balance that security measure versus being cumbersome, being expensive, being just another it's another activity that you got to do. So I mean that's just something that we need to hear all sides on. This is the first step on it, on whether we on the notary issue.
Correct.
Ms. Fitching-Hogg, and then Mr. Van had a question next.
Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know for sure in Oklahoma, and I think pretty sure in Kansas, one of the requirements when you get your notary is you have to notarize ballots for free. That is the one thing that notaries have to do.
That is true in the state of Oklahoma. I don't know about the state of California, but I would admit that more than likely, that I would think that'd be a uniform provision
I thought it was,
that notary ballots are notarized for free. But some notaries don't. I mean, if they get a chance to make $20, they're going to make $20. But at any rate, that's another issue that let's see what the California law is, or Texas and New Mexico, and make sure that they're all copacetic with what we're wanting to accomplish here.
Mr. Van, you had a question?
Yes, I was just wanting to, on the question of notarizing the ballots. Since we're organized groups in California and other places, why can't we utilize those groups for notarizing? And then somebody was saying that the county clerks and stuff will notarize free out there too. So I think we get back to what Todd said, see what the laws are and see where we need to go.
Ms. Coates?
What we discovered in the California law, in fact, in this last election, was that there are provisions in the California law that say that if it is a ballot, they cannot charge for it. Now, they didn't have anything in the code, however, specifically concerning tribal elections, and that was the problem. And I think that we can, so some of the notaries were going with it and others weren't. And I think that is a function that the new organizations can play. I think that is something that we can probably work out without too much difficulty.
Okay. Mr. Hoskin?
I withdraw my question.
All right. Mr. Baker?
I was going to make the same comments that Ms. Coates made. So
You can have Ms. Fulbright?
My comments are this. In Sequoia County, it was really cumbersome finding a notary, although it was free, because about half of the people who applied and received their absentee ballots did not return them. And that was the number one complaint. It was too much trouble to get a notary, and I myself would like to see us do away with it. That's my thoughts on it.
Martha, did you have a...
Let's let Wanda Beavers, our office manager, tell us about that, and if we have a lot of discussion about that.
Wanda?
Please.
The notary law.
There were a few. There was also, and I don't know if Julia had heard anything, in California we had received quite a few calls, and they said there was like a new rule also that they didn't want the notaries
did not want their information on the outside, so they couldn't notarize the envelopes on the outside. And so I told them to go ahead. Now, I don't know, I never got a chance to ask the commissioners if they counted these. I told them just to put notarization on the inside on the envelope, and then put that notary, because it's like a paper they send, to put it on the inside. So, but I had received a lot of calls like that this year regarding that it was some kind of new rule where the notaries didn't want their information on the outside mailed like that. And then some of them did get it notarized, but then they put the whole ballot inside of another envelope. So,
Mr. Emery, did you have a comment on that?
Well, and actually, this be a question for Wanda, since we're on notaries and i.e. absentees. During the constitutional amendment vote, there was an absentee ballot sent to all the freedmen citizens they're just automatically sent to them, correct?
right.
What was the percentage of return on those, on those ballots? You know, if the council would ever consider an all absentee type election, how did that first kind of taste turn out?
Well, we don't know, to freedmen, so we don't know. There were a lot of them that did not appreciate that. They went to the precincts to vote, but I don't know as far as which one of those, the percentage.
Jim, did you know?
They were not separated.
They weren't?
Freedmen were separated
Yeah.
from any other absentee.
Yeah, there was no
Oh,
way for us to
okay,
tell.
all right. I thought maybe you'd sent the freedmen. Okay, so there's no way to tell.
We
Right.
don't have a list at the office that I understand that says freedmen and entitlement.
Yeah.
There's not that.
Wanda, anything else in that regard to notary?
For,
Notary.
no, not on notary, but
Just a moment, Mr. Thornton, I think has a question.
In California, if you bank there, do they have a notary there at that bank?
I think it depends on the bank. That's my understanding, is that many banks do offer that service for
I know we
free
have them
to
here.
their clients.
I know we have them here, and we get everything notarized before our bank.
but that's
But
probably the
also-
biggest complaint is notary.
But also, we had
election.
several people that voted absentee that came to California. They were walk-in votes before the election,
Right.
so, they wouldn't have to come, I guess, if you had.
But that is like the biggest complaint that I've noticed on the past two election is notary. We always get complaints about, because in California we've heard people say it cost me $25 or $30, so that's one of the biggest complaints, having to pay for a notary. So.
Mr. Thornton, were you finished?
Yes.
Any other questions regarding notaries? Yes, Mr. Buzzard, and then Ms. Watts.
I don't know this much about notary, but has the Election Commission ever did a study on what it would cost to set up some precincts in some of our largest at-large voting districts?
Not since I've been at the office now.
Would that be an option for the council to consider? Take a look at our largest at-large voting districts and set up that precinct there. Just a suggestion.
The logistics of that would be very difficult. The first thing that comes to my mind is the security of the ballots. And being so far removed. Let's say we have a polling place in Los Angeles, California, and the logistics of getting the ballots out there, manning it with election commission, election officers, and then anything's possible. But those are the obvious questions or concerns that would jump up to me.
Ms. Watts?
If we were not to do a notary, but we wanted an alternative way of securing the ballots, what would be potential options that you think might be not a logistical nightmare, but still in some kind of validity to the ballot? Like maybe one or two witnesses signing it or something, or?
I don't know. I don't agree with the poll tax either, but I mean, I think it is secure, but like you said, also, I think if people are going to cheat, they're going to find a way to do it anyway,
Yeah,
so.
we've discussed this, and some things, I'm Jim Cosby, I'm the election commission attorney, but
Did you wait till you're recognized?
You're recognized.
Anyway, we thought about maybe using a registration number, a PIN number for them to use instead of getting it notarized, because no one has access to registration numbers. You can't get a list of them anywhere. So, and I know that the notarization deal was a big problem, and I agree. I think that it's just a poor idea to make these people go out, and a lot of our elder citizens and stuff go out and try to find a notary when they're homebound. But I think if they could use something, a unique number or something, a registration number even, that they can put on their ballot to identify them as a voter, I think there's just a less likely potential to fraud as anything doing it that way. So that's what I thought about it.
Because you still have to, may I?
Continue.
So, because you still have to go through this verification process of proofing it, even if it's so you already have because you have access to look at the cross-reference membership, so well, it'd probably be coded in, too, to where it could be automated even, to some degree, couldn't it, with the, okay, thank you.
Ms. Fishing Hawk?
Oh, I was going to ask Mrs. Council a couple of things. Did we ever not have to have ballots that were notarized?
No.
And number two, do you know any other election that doesn't have notarized ballots? Because I remember 2 or 3 election scams back in the 70s and 80s in Oklahoma, and I think you do too.
Yes, ma'am, I do, and they have always had to be notarized. But, you know, thinking about what you've said about, is there any other way we could do it? If you don't vote at the polls on election day, the only way you can do an absentee or another ballot is to bring it to the election office. Well, how is anyone other than our people in this area going to do that? So it takes a lot of thought about how we could change it and do it.
Ms. Jordan, did you have a comment?
Yes, Todd covered most of mine, but down there in Sequoia County, we've had people go to the pen for notarizing ballots and that sort of thing. And, you know, like you was talking about putting a precinct out of state. Orange County alone has 3 million people in it, or 3,500,000. And those people don't want to get out and go vote. I guarantee you they don't. So absentee would be the best way to make it vote.
Yeah, and there are certain...
Go to the store half the time.
And there's a couple of ways that we can think of to increase voter participation in the outlined areas. Online voting is one. All absentee voting for at-large is another. You know, that if you're an at-large voter, now that, you know, the die has been cast on this first election, you know, you had that one-time choice under the Constitution. Now, if you didn't make that choice, you're all at-large. Send everybody in at-large that's registered to vote in absentee automatically. There are things, you know, those are ideas that, you know, you can think of.
Mr. Thornton, you still have...
Tom, what about the blue card concept?
Every time we do an election law revision, we talk about, you know, blue card voting and which, for lack of a better term, blue card voting. But it has been argued in the past that you know, if I should have, you know, one card that you know, identifies me as a Cherokee citizen. If I'm eligible for benefits, you know, everything but my health, and they can swipe that card, and if I'm over 18, I should be able to vote. That's something to, you know, to consider also. Obviously, you know,
that would open it up for every citizen in the nation.
if you're over 18, you know, and that's a school of thought. Well, we want everybody to vote.
Yeah.
You know, let's not even make a registration process. You're over 18, you got a card. I swipe it in the machine, and it shows that I am 18 on that day. I should be able to vote. unless my privilege has been, I mean, that, I'm not making that argument. I'm saying that is an argument, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Corey Jordan?
Well, just from a legal standpoint, it's a lot easier to prove fraud if you got a notary on the ballot. If I'm going to steal your ballot out of your mailbox and sign your name, I'm not going to have any trouble signing 2 other names with it too. I mean, if I'm going to do it once, I might as well do it twice or 3 times. But at least on a notary, it's been proven in Oklahoma, we can trace back to the notary, and if it's not done right, we can prove fraud at that point. I don't know how in the world you'd ever control it if it's just a matter of the voter's going to sign their name and then they're going to get their neighbors to sign their names to witness them. I just see wholesale stealing out of mailboxes in the rural areas. I mean, if I want to steal an election, that's what I'd do. With a little work, the notary system works. I mean, you just got to make sure that your voters know where they can go to 10 or 15 notaries. I mean, how hard is it to get that information out? It's just my fault.
Good. Mr. Baker?
Yes, just FYI, when we sent out the election law reform survey on this issue, we had 4,123 Cherokees respond back, and of that, 67% said they wanted it notarized. Now, they were from all over the United States, they were from California, it was equally sent out, and everybody had a chance. And like I say, out of 4,123 respondents, 2,723 of your constituents said that they wanted it to be notarized. FYI. And your thoughts.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Hoskin?
Yeah, I have a question for Todd. So, Todd, could Cherokee Nations, by statute, create a notary system and then we could increase the pool of available notaries in Cherokee Nation, do our own outreach to try to get, I don't know if this is feasible, just off the top of my head, but I mean, if it's a question of access to notaries, then what can we do about it? We can communicate with the public, we can work maybe with the state notaries, I don't know if they have an association or not, or we could even legislate our own notary system.
I wouldn't argue to create our own notary system because we're just reinventing the wheel. I mean, there are notaries literally in every city, every county in the United States. You know, if it's up to access, you know, and I know the election commissions have done this in the past. You know, have restoration drives, absentee drives, in which they have a notary there. There's any number of ways that we can get notaries. We can hire notaries to go. But I wouldn't create a whole notary statute just for the Cherokee Nation itself. And you know what I would state is that we're going to talk a lot about notaries, and but we have a lot of wealth of information here. I would say let's go to other topics, or if we want to talk about notaries all day long here, that'd be fine. But let's not get stuck on one topic right here and see if there's anything else out there that we want to talk about. But obviously, the question of whether a notary is going to exist is going to be one of great import.
Ms. Calico, did you have any other comments?
I had one comment I want to tell you, and it's just for information. In 1971, we voted with the blue card, 75, 79, 83, and 87. We voted with the blue card. And in 91, we started voter registration. We had about the same number of people vote every election, whether we used the blue card or whether it was voter registration. So,
Mr. Baker?
Yeah, which brings me to another thought. With the present registration, if we redistrict where everybody in Delaware County does not vote just in Delaware County, how do you see that working unless we have a re-registration?
It would almost have to be. We've got to know where they live, what area they're in, so that's re-registration. And that's work that will take quite a while to do, Mr. Baker. It's something that certainly needs.
I mean, you don't have a magic computer that says Bill Baker lives north of this highway and west of that one, or?
No. Nor do we have that on that tribal member that says this is where they live. If it's Route 2 Tahlequah.
Could be.
Yeah. Who did that?
Could be pegged.
That's correct.
I mean, Route 2 Tahlequah could be pegged.
Yeah. Whatever changes you're going to do, whether it be notary or whatever, needs to be done. It needs to be finalized, and then it doesn't need to be changed.
And then I see the blue card being, I mean, I've always been for blue card, but you know what county you live in. You don't know if you live, I mean, you know if you live there.
Some tribal members have 4 blue cards. You know, are you going to re-register those 240,000 tribal members that are on our rolls?
Mr. Count Watts, and then Mr. Garvin, and then we'll move on to Mr. Cosby, being a very busy attorney. If you don't mind, your comments next.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want a copy of
Ms. Count Watts, and then Mr. Garvin.
I just wanted a copy of that if at all possible. Thank you.
You may have it. Mr. Garvin?
I had one question for Ms. Calico. What year did they start notarizing ballots?
You know, the best I know, they've always been notarized. Best I know. You know, I don't know about the 70s. You know,
It's my understanding that originally they didn't notarize.
Well, I've helped in 5, and those were. So, and we've had, however many is that, 71, so now how many is that? 20 years.
But you probably look it up and look back to us.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Madam
You're
Speaker.
very busy and appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It's always an honor to appear before the council. As everyone's kind of indicated, yes, we did have quite a few problems during the last election. There's a lot of questions that really no one knew the answer to, that the election commission just kind of had to wing. And I agree with everyone else. Now is probably a pretty good time to maybe take care of some of this stuff, however the council sees fit to take care of it. One thing that kind of was kind of a letdown when we had the Friedman election, that the council had voted in an all mail-out election, but we had absolutely no laws or rules that went along with that helped us do that. And that's something that would have saved us a lot of time, and that was an option that we looked at, but because we didn't have those rules and such, we couldn't do that. I think the at-large stuff, I think that it'll be worked out, but I agree with Mr. Baker. There's a lot of trouble. These folks don't know where to vote or even what district they're in, so I think that it's important that we educate a lot of our citizens on for the next time that this does happen. But there's just all kinds of things that I think that the council should look at. All the election laws, I think there's rules with regard to petitions to make new laws and stuff that aren't addressed in the Constitution that we probably need some additional rules on. So I think that it's important that we just sit down and go over these things and see what's being corrected. I think Ms. Beaver's probably one of her and Ms. Calico are probably very knowledgeable with regard to our election laws, and I think that it's important that we have them assist us on what needs to be done. But I think there's quite a bit that does need to be done, and that we need to look at it and try to clean some of it up. And I know a lot of these laws were new that you all made, but we probably need to go back and add a little to it and amend a few of them just to make things smoother for the next election. That's all I have.
Mr. Count Watts, you have a question, Mr. Cosby?
Do you have a list of those items? It sounds like you know about them.
Yes, myself and Ms. Morton, we've worked on it a time or two. We've discussed it, and I think that it's just kind of an ongoing list of things, because we've even discussed that there were bylaws issues that need to be looked at and everything else with the election commission.
Have you shared that with our chair?
No, I have not, but I can.
Thank you.
But yes, ma'am.
Anyone else have questions for Mr. Cosby? For those of you that met him, he was the attorney for the Election Commission last term. Mr. Hembry?
Jim, could you went through some old grievances that had been filed with the election commission. Anything about that process you think needs to be changed, or anything that works particularly well on
Yes, I do, and a lot of that is just the wording in the Constitution. It says that, like on initiative petitions or referendum petitions, ones will be filed and one won't. And I think we always thought that both of them should, even though the Constitution didn't address that, and that's kind of a rule we just had to come up with on our own, that they would be done that way. But I think just some clarification on that, because when we say that and some citizen says, well, that's not what the Constitution says, and there we are in court having to have the courts decide how it should be. I think we just need to lay it out a little cleaner.
Ms. Fishing Hawk?
Can you talk to me about an ethics commission? What you think about an ethics commission? Because we don't have one, as big as our elections are.
I mean, as far as what, though?
As far as an ethics commission like your state ethics commissions.
Myself, I didn't see a need for it. I mean, I didn't see any unethical, but I mean, I guess that's always a possibility. I don't think that would be a bad idea. I mean, any time that you have a kind of like an oversight committee that watches for those kind of things, I think it's a good idea. But I don't think that we experienced a whole lot of ethical dilemmas when we did, I mean, it was basically, well, there's no rules, what do we do in this situation? And of course, we'd ask the Attorney General and stuff and try to get opinions that way, but, kind of had to wing it on a lot of stuff.
Mr. Henry, did you have a comment in that regard?
Well, one, and this would be for Jim or any of the staff or former election commissioners, as to, you have an ethics commission for enforceability, penalties, etc. The enforceability measures in the election code right now, do you think it's does it have enough teeth? Is it too much, too little, just about right? As into the enforceability of the act, how do you think the commission would?
Well, here's something that we came across is when we had these initiative petitions out being signed, is that a lot of them weren't being signed in Indian country, which limited our ability to have the courts penalize any person that did commit fraud. And same goes on these notary deals on absentee ballots. I mean, our courts probably don't have a whole lot of jurisdiction over one of our citizens in the state of California unless it happened on Indian land. So, I mean, that to me was the big problem, is a lot of these things that did happen were not within the realm of our court system because it didn't happen in Indian country. And we were under the impression, well, if somebody messes up, we're going to hammer them, and come to find out we really didn't have a hammer to get them with.
Ms. Fulbright?
My comments were this, since I live down close to the Arkansas border, and there was so much confusion over the at-large, because we're a roaming society and everybody moves around, and they had bad addresses, and when they went over to Muldrow to vote where they generally did, well, they told them they had to vote at large. They didn't want to. They voted a challenge ballot. And then they never could find out from the election commission if their ballot was counted or not counted. They called several times and they said, well, Marilyn Vance wanted to know the same thing about her people, but nobody could ever find the answer to that. So I think that's the issue that needs to be addressed. If someone votes a challenge ballot and they want to know if their vote counted or not, is there a way for them to know?
Well, and that might be better directed towards Wanda or Miss Calico, but I don't think it is, because those votes were counted, but I don't know that they could go in and say, well, yes, your vote was counted, but they know they can probably say X amount were counted and X amount were not counted.
Is that all, Ms. Fulbright? Ms. Jordan?
Jim?
I'm sorry.
Did I?
Said Paul.
Jordan.
Okay.
Sorry, I mumbled.
About the enforcement ability that the election commission had, what would have been the ability of the election commission to correct this? if they had noticed on an expenditure report that someone took a corporate donation, which is prohibited by the rules,
Right.
what was their enforcement ability?
Well, that was normally turned over to the prosecutor's office, and it was handled through that channel. I mean, it was the commission's duty to report that, and I believe that some of it was reported, but I'm not.
Martha, could you step up here?
Yes, ma'am.
What was your belief had to happen in the event that you saw something on an expenditure report along the lines of someone taking a corporate donation? Was that left to the candidates to sue each other, or did you feel that your election commission had enforcement ability?
I wasn't on the election commission, but I think what my thought is that the election commission is not an enforcement agency. That I think what we do is the candidate provides that information. We look over it to see that all the forms are there and this sort of thing. Now, as far as I know, we cannot enforce. If they do it wrong and we can see it, we send it back and ask them to correct it. We take it back again. We're not an enforcement.
Then would it not be better to have an ethics commission separate from the election commission where these complaints could go to and be addressed? And that they have the enforcement ability. Take it away from candidates suing each other. Take it away from the job of what you all are doing, which is to run the election commission. But these ethical dilemmas where there's a violation of the rules, would it not be better to have an ethics commission off to the side here to report those to?
That might be true, but isn't it now that a candidate versus a candidate? I mean, most of the candidates got copies of everybody else's financial. You know, isn't that a candidate-to-candidate issue right now? So, and if it is.
It is within 6 months of the election,
Okay.
but during the election, it's not something that really a candidate would probably feel comfortable suing another candidate during the election regarding their contribution.
Then that's something that needs to be addressed also in the election reform and laws that you're going to do. And whether you need an ethics commission.
And I would say it's a good idea simply for the fact, because if you have an election going on, the commission's usually swamped dealing with that, because there are a lot of candidates come in there and say, well, hey, look at this and this and that, and we had several meetings just over that. So I think an ethics commission would be a good idea for that reason, just to let the election commission do their task, and they could deal with ethical problems. That's my thought.
Mr. Garvin?
Yes. I'm just wondering if we might learn something from the Creek election. It's just over, they started this recount, and I don't know the details, but the court stopped it. Can you shed some light on that to one way or the other?
Yeah. Well, we can learn a lot about how not to do an election from the.
What can we learn?
I hope I hear that. No, I mean, that was, without going into it, I had some people contact me about that. Basically, it was kind of a train wreck. You had a chief candidate that lost the election by 21 votes. You know, he pays $5,000 for a recount, non-refundable. And the Supreme Court proceeds with the recount, and then makes a judicial determination that they could not they could not attest to the security of the ballots between election day and recount day, so they stop all recount and just certify the election as it is. You know, which kind of wholly, completely defeats your, purpose for having to recount in the first place. So no, we should study the Creeks election, and because we could probably learn a lot about, how ballots should be secured, and we've had recounts before, and they've gone off in a civilized manner. But these are all things that that we need to consider. And yeah, I think we should study the Creeks election.
Thank you.
Mr. Thornton?
There's something here I really want to emphasize to everyone, and our employees over there, are the employees over there that run the election. We don't have enough employees over there. I've been here 2 terms, this is my 3rd term. And not only did they not have enough employees to do what they need to do over there, and there's several things, we have people deceased that's on those roles over there. And we have people that's moved, and, these people have to keep up with all that. And also, we're going to start having elections after this next 4 years, every 2 years. We need to start gearing up for that right now. And to me, those people over there need help. There's not enough people over there to run that show. But that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin?
It was addressed, Madam Speaker.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Cosby? Yes,
I
Ms.
just like to
Gordon.
add one thing. I want to commend all of you all for what you did with what you had to work with, because I agree with Councilman Thornton. You did not have enough help, and you took an impossible task and you made it work. And this is the first election that we have not had a lawsuit. So there's more things being done right than done wrong. And I hope when we look at these election laws that we only tweak them, that we don't completely change them like we've been doing. Because I agree with Ms. Calico, seems like every 4 years, because I can remember way back when my dad ran. And that's been back in the early 90s. Well, the early 90s, and your dad ran in the early 70s. These election laws they're just completely different. Every time an election, you pick them up, you think, well, where did all this come from? Let's get something and let's stay with it. And let's just tweak it when it's an impossible thing that has to be addressed.
And I agree, the laws that we have are good. I think they need to be clarified a little bit. I think they're good the way they are.
Did you have a comment in regard to Ms. Jordan's?
Well, hopefully the area of staffing will be addressed, because now under our Constitution, there is a permanent election commission. It will not cease to exist 6 months after the election. And that's one thing we need to change in our election code. What are going to be the terms of these commissioners? Are they going to be staggered? Are they going to, because you're going to have intervening elections every 2 and 4 years here in the future. And I would, again, echo what has been said, that you don't change the laws drastically. The major change, or the major issue that you all will need to tackle in the subcommittees is the issue of redistricting. If you're going to have one counselor per district, or you're going to keep it the same. You keep it the same, there's some minor touches that need to be made. If you don't keep it the same, we're going to have to re-register everybody. We're going to have to tackle the voter ID card. We're going to tackle a lot of things. So I mean, in our future meetings, that's, I think, the number one issue that you need to consider.
Ms. Fishing, one more question for Mr. Cosby, and then I'd like for Ms. Wilson to come forward, because we only have about 5 minutes.
Could you find out when we didn't require a notary? Because my dad was on the council for 3 terms in the 70s and 80s. And me and Janelle was sitting here trying to figure out when you didn't require a notary.
Okay, I can check and find that out.
Thanks, Mr. Cosby.
Ma'am.
Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson, Jenny Wilson, thank you for coming. We appreciate you giving up your time.
I served on the 95 and 99 commissions. There are 2 things I'd like to please request that you continue to do, and one is use the counting machines, which takes the hand counting out of the picture entirely. Ballots should not be hand counted. And please continue to post the absentee results at 7 o'clock, right when you close the polls. That, again, gives credibility to your election.
Any questions for Ms. Wilson? You did good.
And by the way, there wasn't a lawsuit in the 99 election. Not a recount, not a protest, and not a lawsuit.
I stand corrected.
The 99 election was very clean. That's the first time we used those machines. That's why I'm sold on.
Thank you very much for your comment. Are there any other former commissioners? Yes, Mr. Van.
I just got a few suggestions everybody might disagree with. I think we need more precincts. We got people that driving 30, 40 miles to get to vote, and that's one of the things that keeps them from voting. That's one of the things I've heard out there. I think we need more money for getting out to vote. That's what we need. We're spending money on the state election, but we're not spending money on our own election. You know, so we need to spend more money on our own election so people can go out and inform the people on what's going on out here. You know, our election laws, new election laws and all that. So I think that's one thing we need to really look at. I think we need to utilize the community buildings that we have out there. I think we need to get out there to those, and each precinct or each district that's got one needs to utilize it. We can leave information out there, voter registration. And I think we need to go out to the absentee people out in California and Texas and all that. They've done it before. So I think it needs to be, you know, we can set up meetings out there and do that. And another way I think is we need to figure out a way to take people off the list, the dead people, other than what we got now. It's not working. So we need to look at that and see what we can do. And another thing I'd like to see is if we send out cards to verify addresses probably once or twice a year if we're going to redo this. Because people's going to, I know they move every week, but if we could send out a card probably a month before the elections, it might help us get a good list on where people are. So that's just some of the things I'd like to see.
Any questions for Mr. Van? Very good points. Thank you so much for coming. Mr. Buzzer, I'm sorry.
No, I'd like to hear from the staff there with Wanda and her people working in the front office to see what they have in suggestions before we close here, Madam Chair.
Wanda, did you have some comments?
The only
We've got about 2-3 minutes.
Okay, the only thing, people do move a lot because a lot of times we'll get an application that day. We send them a postcard when it's processed. You know, we get applications processed that day, and that card may come back. You know, so they've already moved, or they gave us the wrong address or something. So I don't know how to, you know, come up with a better solution on addresses. But on at-large, that was basically our main concern. One of the things I thought, if you're going to address at-large in the laws, for people who live in the district, if they move out of the district, do they get to keep the precinct they were at before? Are we going to let them have a choice whether they can stay in, or is it going to be automatically, you know, at large? Once you move out of the, you know, district, are you going at large? Because I know it addresses, you know, when you move in, you can change to precinct, but it doesn't address whether you move out. So, and also I thought maybe someone else had made that suggestion for at-large voters. Maybe the people who live out of state could automatically be given an absentee ballot instead of having to request one. But I know some of the people who are at-large voters who live within the state, they did come to the walk-in vote in those 3 days.
Any questions for Ms. Beaver? Comments? Yes, Mr. Thornton?
I really don't have a question for her, but Todd, at that large vote, I need to get that Constitution in and be able to look at it and see what we're supposed to do, you know, to follow the Constitution. So.
Right, and and I can't quote it off the top of my head, but when it was enacted, and we have some delegates here, if you were at large, you had a one-time only. There you go, Johnny on the spot. Opportunity to either choose a district in which to vote, and then you would get to do that from time immemorial, and then after that, if you didn't make such a delegation, you're at large. Okay, and there is. It would take a long time to describe to you the 25 years of age thing once again, but in a nutshell, that's what it is. But you're absolutely right. In drafting these election codes, we need to make sure that we are going to comply with the Constitution.
Thank you, Todd. Sometimes you do a good job.
Sometimes.
Ms. Count Watts, did you want to briefly give an overview of your redistricting proposal before we adjourn?
It's the same. I think Chief Smith had asked for some time, but he was unable to make it. We don't have any maps ready. That won't be until January. It's the same as what we had presented earlier. Both Dawn and I, if we left it as the current districts and reapportioned, we would both gain seats, and Adair and Mays would lose seats. We're looking, our personal goals, though, is we think that the Constitution and other things call for 15 separate equal districts.
Mr. Garvin?
Just to add, this was passed out because this is what the council voted and passed last time. That's the only reason it's passed out. That's, the council passed it and the chief vetoed it. And we lacked one vote of overriding. But anyway, it's something to look at, and we're working off of this.
Is this
Ms.
what,
Jordan?
is this kind of what, Don, you and Councilor Watts are wanting? Or is there something different going to come to us?
Well, this is just what happened the last time. So we're working to improve upon it.
So why did we even pass this one out?
Just so you know what happened last year.
Are you using this as a base, perhaps?
It's a starting point.
Yeah.
Do you all have any idea at this point in time how you want this done a little different?
Not really.
It's the population divided by 15, and then we look for communities that make sense.
Well, isn't this kind of how this one is? Is population divided by 15 and got it pretty close?
Well, like, for example, for one district, Brad's not here to defend his area, but it does not make sense for Chelsea to be part of Washington County. You know, it might make sense for Ugauntalala, but that big L doesn't build community if it's supposed to be separate 15. So we're looking for contiguous areas that can help. Like, for example, when we had emergency management issues, because I had an area that was understood by folks and it was an area that made sense to drive, I was able to assist better with Rogers County. Now I could definitely take less of Rogers County and probably do more, but making it something that doesn't make sense to people logically, physically, community-wise, is not going to work. So we're trying to look and see the communities that gather together by towns.
Will you have that ready by January meeting, do you think?
That's what we committed to, yeah.
Okay.
If anyone has suggestions, well, we'd be glad to look at them. And need your input.
One email to Shelley so she'll have an idea of what your suggestions are, and then she can transmit them. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Except it's the chief's birthday and he's actually showed up to speak. Is there any chance we can give him a couple minutes?
Well, unless Mr. Curtis wants to let him speak in his, but ours is finished.
Can we do a version of happy birthday?
We'll save that for later.
Madam Chair, I did want to talk about the redistricting thing for just a second.
1 second.
You're very right.
We're over into no, we're over into his time, but if I yield to Mr. Snell, do you mind if he takes a minute or two?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? You got 2 minutes.
It's that holiday spirit that he gave me 2 rather than 1. The only thing that I wanted to share with you is that when the principles by which we redistrict, of course, the driving principle is the idea that equal number of people would be represented by a person on the council, one man, one vote kind of concept. The other thing that I would like for us to consider is the other principles that help drive our decision making. For example, rather than saying, well, you've got two extremes of redistricting. One is what we had before, true districting is that we had at-large. In this instance, you would have 17 people representing everybody in the Cherokee Nation, and that would fit the one-man, one-person rule. And what you would see in that instance is, with 17 people, they'd be more focused on what's good for the Cherokee Nation as a body, as opposed to what's good for Cherokee people on various locations. The other end of the spectrum is where we had 17 individual districts. And then there your focus would be primarily on those people, your immediate constituents, what's good for them as opposed to what's good for the Cherokee Nation as a body. And in between those, you've got various possibilities. Currently, we have 9 districts with a split of 2 and 1 in each district that sometimes roughly approximates the one-man, one-vote concept. Or you could have other combinations. It could be that we could have 5 districts with 3 councilmen per district, or 3 districts with 5 councilmen per district, in various combinations. So I'm saying all that to say this. Perhaps one of the things we could think about is actually look at the areas that are part of the Cherokee Nation. I'm talking about the Cherokee Nation proper, the 14 counties. And are there common interests that would suggest a natural configuration of districts? For example, if you looked at Nowata and Washington County and maybe Craig County, the historic economy there is ranching, open areas, and such, and so there's more of a commonality with those people as opposed to Sequoia and Adair County that's rural back up the mountain hill. No, it's Mr. Curtis. It's his time, Jody. Don't. And so that's what I'm not suggesting anything now, but I would like for us to think about the principles that would help us design the districting. One of those principles could be the commonality of interest in people in a region that is not bound by county lines or historic boundaries. So that's what I want to share with you. So thank you, Mr. Snell, for your kind courtesy.
Thank you.
Motion adjourned.
Hey, right. All opposed? Commissioners and Mr. Cosby, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your presence here today. You got some good ideas.